She walked into a small laboratory in a new valley, where a young boy was staring at a drop of honey under a microscope. "What do you see?" Anya asked. The boy looked up, his eyes sparkling with a familiar mischief. "I see a mystery," he said. "I see a story that wants to be told." Outside, the bells of St. Vincent's began to toll. The sound was different now. It wasn't a call to prayer, and it wasn't a call to arms. It was a heartbeat, the pulse of a home that was everywhere at once. The mist remained on the hills, gray and silk-like, damp and protective. And within the mist, the stone heart beat on, reminding every soul that while the stars may fade and the suns may die, the smallest act of kindness is the only thing that is truly, perpetually, perennial. Chapter 65. The Ghost in the Light. As Leo and Anya worked to stabilize the Sentinel of the Ordinary, a profound anomaly occurred in the Terra Cotswold sector. A segment of the living cathedral, usually a place of perfect harmonic vibration, began to flicker with a harsh, rhythmic static. It wasn't a failure of technology, but a scream of resonant trauma. Deep within the static, a figure began to coalesce. It wasn't a spirit of light, but a man dressed in the ragged remains of a 1960s suit, his face contorted in a silent, eternal agony. "It's a ghost in the light," Leo whispered, peering through the magnifying glass, a memory so heavy with guilt that it refused to dissolve into the singularity. Anya touched the edges of the static. "It's Matthew," said, "not the man who found redemption in the gardens, but the version of him that existed the moment he raised that candlestick. The moment of the murder has been preserved as a loop. The existence of this ghost threatened the entire equilibrium. Guilt, once introduced into the protocol of mercy, began to act like a virus. If they couldn't solve this final echo of the past, the universe of light would be consumed by its own shadows." Chapter 66. The Forensic Soul. Leo realized that they couldn't simply erase the ghost. In a universe built on truth, erasing a shadow was a lie. They had to solve it. They had to perform a forensic analysis of the soul. Using the smallest reagents, they had gathered the thread of the tweed jacket, the scent of lavender, and the smudge on the glass tube. Leo and Anya constructed a resonant reenactment. They didn't just watch the murder, they entered the consciousness of everyone involved. They felt the Earl's crushing debt, Ronnie Panessa's cold greed, and Lynn Goodwin's hidden resentment. But most importantly, they felt the silence of Sister Helena. Helena didn't just die, Anya realized as she moved through the data. She offered herself. She knew that Matthew would only find his soul if his mask was shattered. Her death wasn't a tragedy. It was a catalyst for the redemption of Great Slaughter. As this realization flooded the resonance, the static began to change. The harsh white noise turned into the soft sound of rain on a slate roof. The ragged figure of the ghost began to soften, the suit transforming into the simple gardener's clothes that Matthew had worn in his final years of peace. Chapter 67. The Union of Hearts. The final mystery was solved, not with a weapon, but with an act of radical forgiveness. Leo and Anya stood before the ghost of Matthew and offered him the smallest regent, the microscopic drop of sacramental wine. "The debt is settled," Leo said, his voice echoing the authority of Inspector Gillespie and the mercy of Sister Bourne, not in coin, but in intent. The ghost didn't vanish. He smiled, a genuine, broken, human smile, and merged with the light. The Sentinel of the Ordinary had proven its worth. The universe wasn't just a place of light. It was a place where light and shadow had finally made peace. In the Sanctuary of Light, the original Sam and Ruth watched the union. "We finally closed the case, Penny." "And what a story it turned out to be, Sam," Ruth replied, leaning her head on his shoulder. Sister Boniface adjusted her goggles and looked at the new dawn. "Golly, the chemistry of love is the most complex reaction of all, and the most beautiful." The bells of St. Vincent's tolled once more, a deep, resonant sound that carried the weight of 500 years and the lightness of eternity. Great Slaughter was no longer just a village. It was the heartbeat of the universe, a home that would never truly end. Chapter 68. The Paradox of Forgetting. Peace, however, is a restless thing. In the high halls of the Council of the Perennial, a new shadow began to stir, not from malice, but from the natural erosion of time. They called it the Great Forgetting, because the universe was now so vast, and the light so pervasive. The specific memories of Great Slaughter were starting to thin. The names of the sisters, the precise timbre of Sam's voice, and the ink of Ruth's first article were fading into a generic hum of kindness. "The resolution is dropping," Leo observed, monitoring the resonant archive. It's like a photograph that's been copied too many times. We are losing the grain. We are losing the heart of the stone. Anya, sitting in the center of the living cathedral, felt the cold. If we forget the specifics of the struggle, the mercy becomes a machine. We need a fixed point of truth, something that cannot be digitized or synthesized. They realized that the smallest reagents were no longer enough. They needed to re-inhabit the struggle. Chapter 6. To combat the forgetting, Leo and Anya initiated the St. Vincent Protocol. They didn't just project the memory. They manifested a physical resonant construct of great slaughter in the year 1960. But this wasn't a museum. It was a living forensic. Suddenly, on the surface of Terra Cotswolds, a limestone laboratory crystallized. The smell of diesel fumes and cold ink returned. A young Leo found himself wearing a tweed jacket, and Anya found herself in a habit, standing at an arched window. "Why are we here, in this density?" Leo asked, feeling the unfamiliar weight of his own shoes. "Because you cannot understand the truth if you only see the light," a voice boomed. It was Sister Boniface, manifested not as a spirit, but as the formidable scientist. She was holding a test tube filled with a murky, dark liquid. This is the impurity of choice. In the singularity, everything is decided by resonance. But here, in 1965, everything is decided by the messy, unpredictable human heart. Golly, look at the dust. It's beautiful. They were back at the moment of the quincentennial pageant, but with a difference. This time, they weren't watching the past. They were the guardians of its survival. Chapter 70. The Final Forensic. The construct was being attacked, not by Ouroboros, but by the void of apathy, the cosmic force of the forgetting. The buildings were flickering. The townspeople were becoming translucent. The case is this. Sam Gillespie appeared, his face etched with the gravity of 1,000 solved crimes. If the people of Great Slaughter don't choose to stay, the village vanishes, and if the village vanishes, the anchor of the universe breaks. Leo and Anya had to find the missing regent, the one thing that wasn't in the archive. It was the unspoken word. They traced the resonance to the ruins of the old chapel in the woods. There, they found a young Ruth Penny and a young Sam Gillespie, standing in the rain. This was a moment that had never been recorded. "I can't stay, Sam," the young Ruth said, her eyes filled with a grief that hadn't yet become history. "London is calling. There are stories that need my voice." "I know," Sam said, his heart a stone of silent devotion. "But I'll be here, waiting for the mist to clear." In the archive, this moment ended there. But in the living forensic, Leo and Anya saw what happened next. Sam reached out and handed Ruth a small, jagged piece of limestone from the chapel wall. "Take a piece of the heart with you," he whispered, "so you never truly leave." Chapter 71. The Heart's Blueprint. That piece of limestone was the missing reagent. It was the physical act of bearing witness to a love that expected nothing in return. Leo reached into the scene and touched the stone. The moment he did, the forgetting stopped. The construct of Great Slaughter solidified, no longer a projection, but a permanent reality within the infinite light. Mercy isn't just about forgiveness, Anya realized, her eyes glowing with the wisdom of the handover. It's about the permanence of the bond. The stone heart isn't just a metaphor. It's the decision to be unyielding in our love for one another. The universe didn't just hum. It sang with a new, granular detail. The names were restored. The scents were sharpened. The quiet song of mercy now had a baseline of unbreakable choice. As the living forensic merged back into the sanctuary of light, Leo and Anya looked back one last time. They saw Sister Boniface cleaning a test tube, humming a joyful tune. They saw Sam and Ruth walking toward the Stag and Hound. Great Slaughter was safe. The 500 years were now an eternal second, and the heart, once stone, then gold, was now the very fabric of everything that ever was and ever would be. Chapter 72. The Multiversal Resonance. With the permanent reality of Great Slaughter secured, the resonance began to ripple outward, touching not just one timeline, but all of them. Leo and Anya discovered that for every choice made in 1960, a new St. Vincent was born in another dimension. There was a great slaughter in a world of one in a cyberpunk sprawl, and another where the mist was made of stardust. They are all branching from the same stone heart, Leo realized, observing the shifting geometries of the resonant archive. But they are beginning to drift apart. The unbreakable choice we found is becoming an infinite dissonance. The challenge was no longer just about remembering the past. It was about harmonizing the infinite variations of the future. The Council of the Perennial